I hope people fall in love with the love story because it's so important.
It's the most emotional experience that a person can go through.
It is insane. I am thankful for it every day.
Rachel Zegler's reaction stunned everyone. Just days after theaters allegedly began pulling Snow White from screens, the actress reportedly fired back in a viral video that's got everyone talking. Was this a breakdown or a bold clapback? Either way, the internet isn't letting it go. Let's break down what happened. Rachel Zegler thought she was setting the record straight. In a dimly lit video recorded from her bedroom, she looked straight into the camera, frustrated, teary-eyed, and tired. She talked about the hate she's been receiving, the death threats, and how, despite it all, people still line up to see her work. She quoted the famous statue Winged Victory, drawing a comparison between its cracked, broken form and her own public image. Her message was clear. Even with flaws, she's still worthy of being seen. But the internet didn't buy it. Instead of sympathy, what followed was a digital explosion.
That I've never met, but we had a really funny Twitter exchange.
Clips from her video were instantly shared, dissected, and parodied across TikTok and other platforms. Some mocked her tone, others questioned her sincerity. It didn't matter what she meant. The internet had already made up its mind. Rather than silencing her critics, Rachel had unintentionally handed them new material to work with. Her video, meant to reclaim her story, became fuel for an even bigger backlash. And just like that, she went from a misunderstood actress trying to speak her truth to the center of a viral storm she never saw coming. The moment the video hit the internet, the response was immediate and intense. TikTokers didn't just react, they created entire skits mocking Rachel's statements. What was supposed to be an emotional moment turned into an internet-wide roast. People weren't just making fun of her, they were digging deeper. Old clips resurfaced from past interviews, showing Rachel dismissing the original 1937 Snow White film as outdated and strange.
It's no longer 1937, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Some viewers called her tone smug. Others said she sounded like someone who didn't respect the material she was cast to reimagine. And then came the memes. Out-of-context quotes like, "I'm not a damsel in distress," and "she's not dreaming about true love," were plastered over viral videos, mocking what critics saw as a forced modern message. A video essay even claimed Snow White now lived in a utopian society where everyone shared resources equally. It wasn't just the usual trolls either. Some longtime Disney fans chimed in with their own disappointment. To them, this wasn't about progress. It was about missing the point of what made the original story timeless. And Rachel? She suddenly became the face of it all. When the plot of the new Snow White film started making the rounds, fans were stunned. Gone was the familiar fairy tale about love and rescue. In its place was a story about leadership, independence, and a heroine who didn't need saving.
This is a classic film that established the Disney name.
According to early reviews and viral breakdowns, Snow White didn't even get her name from her fair skin anymore. Instead, she earned it by surviving a snowstorm. In theory, it sounded like a bold update, but to many, it felt like the soul of the original had been erased. Social media lit up with questions. Why change a classic so much? Why hire someone who doesn't even seem to like the story? Parents who grew up loving the original were now hesitant to show the remake to their kids. Viewers pointed out that stories can evolve, but removing key elements, like the prince or the romance, might change it into something unrecognizable. Instead of adding depth, critics said the rewrite stripped away the heart. And with Rachel leading the charge, her bold statements about rewriting the tale weren't seen as progressive. They were seen as dismissive. And the internet didn't forget. The numbers spoke louder than any tweet. Snow White opened with just $45 million at the domestic box office, a staggering figure for a Disney live-action remake, especially one carrying the legacy of the studio's very first animated film. To put things in perspective, The Little Mermaid brought in $95 million its opening weekend, despite facing its own share of criticism. So when Snow White struggled to find footing, people began connecting the dots. Reports quickly surfaced that theaters were quietly removing the film from prime slots. In some locations, it was dropped altogether by the second weekend. High-performing films replaced it on major screens, and Snow White was pushed to less desirable time slots, late nights and early mornings with barely any foot traffic. Fans online weren't surprised.
The first time I heard Waiting on a Wish was when I was preparing.
The writing was on the wall, one user posted. Others said it was a reflection of what happens when studios stop listening to audiences. Disney, known for box office dominance, suddenly found itself with an underperforming giant. And for Rachel Zegler, those dwindling ticket sales weren't just disappointing, they were public. Every number became a headline, every missed milestone a punchline. And the worst part? The spotlight hadn't even shifted yet. The Oscars should have been a turning point. Dressed in elegance and standing alongside co-star Gal Gadot, Rachel Zegler returned to the spotlight, but not for the reasons she might have hoped. Photos and videos from that night raised eyebrows across the internet. Gal, usually warm and engaging in interviews, barely acknowledged Rachel during their red carpet appearance. In press interviews, their body language told a different story: stiff postures, awkward silences, and little to no eye contact. The internet took notice fast. Body language experts broke it down frame by frame, calling the interactions tense and strained. Gossip pages speculated that their working relationship had soured behind the scenes. Sources later claimed Gal Gadot had fulfilled her promotional duties as part of her contract, but had no plans to continue associating with the film.
It was a lot of fun playing her. I really enjoyed her deliciousness.
Meanwhile, Rachel found herself alone in press appearances, without the camaraderie that often helps actors weather public backlash. And perhaps more telling than anything else, Gal's career moved forward smoothly. Brand deals, casting news, glowing headlines. Rachel, on the other hand, saw herself retreating from the spotlight. The contrast was clear, and for many watching, it was starting to look like Hollywood was choosing sides. One of the loudest moments in Rachel's journey came from the silence that followed. As the controversy grew, fans waited for someone, anyone, to stand by her. Maybe a co-star, a director, a fellow actress who understood how brutal the spotlight can be. But no one came. There were no public statements of support, no tweets defending her character, no Instagram stories saying, "hang in there." In an industry where actors often rally around one another during tough times, Rachel's corner remained empty. Insiders began whispering that it wasn't just the public pulling back. Hollywood was too. Rumors swirled about projects she'd been in talks for quietly stalling. A source from one studio admitted they were reconsidering her attachment to future films. It wasn't about talent. Rachel had proven herself in West Side Story and had even been praised by Spielberg. But in Hollywood, perception matters. And right now, hers wasn't good. Marketing teams questioned whether she could carry a campaign without controversy. Would fans show up to see her again, or would they scroll past in frustration? Suddenly, the girl once positioned as the next big thing was now at risk of becoming a cautionary tale. Rachel Zegler didn't lack confidence. If anything, she had plenty. But somewhere along the line, that confidence began to rub people the wrong way. In older interviews that quickly went viral again, Rachel dismissed the original Snow White as outdated, calling the romance storyline weird and creepy. She joked about not needing a prince and mentioned that her character wasn't waiting around for love. While some praised her modern take, others saw her comments as disrespectful. They argued that it's one thing to reinterpret a classic, but another to mock what made it special in the first place. Disney fans are a loyal bunch. Generations grew up with the original Snow White, and when the actress cast to carry that legacy rolled her eyes at it, many took it personally. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. The sarcasm, the dismissal, the confidence that bordered on arrogance. Instead of uniting audiences around a fresh vision, the press tour ended up dividing them. And by the time Rachel tried to explain herself in that emotional video, the damage was already done. Because sometimes it's not about being right, it's about reading the room. And this time, the room had left. Behind the scenes, there's talk that Rachel's team is working overtime. Publicists, agents, and managers are reportedly pitching her for softer interviews, ones that can humanize her, show a more vulnerable side, and possibly shift public opinion. They're not giving up. But they also know the road ahead won't be easy. Hollywood loves a comeback. But comebacks don't happen without humility, or at least a strategy to reconnect with fans. So far, Rachel hasn't offered a formal apology. She hasn't taken accountability publicly or shown signs of stepping back to reflect. Instead, her tone has remained firm, sometimes even defensive. And while that might resonate with a loyal few, it's made it harder to rebuild trust with the wider audience. Other stars have bounced back from worse, but they did it by listening, adapting, and learning from the moment. Rachel's path is still open, but it's narrowing fast. The question now is, can she pivot before it's too late? Or will this chapter define her career far more than the roles she's played? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this, don't forget to watch our next video. The story isn't over yet.